Jake Mitchell was halfway through his lunch when the proximity alarm started beeping. He set down his sandwich and walked over to the observation window of his repair dock. What he saw made him forget all about eating. A ship was limping toward his station, and calling it a mess would be kind. The vessel moved through space like a drunk trying to walk a straight line. One engine sputtered with weak bursts of energy while the other seemed completely dead. The hull was covered in black carbon scoring, the kind you get from flying too close to plasma fire. Panels hung loose from the frame, dangling by their connecting wires. Some sections of the outer plating were just gone, exposing the inner structure to the vacuum of space. Jake whistled low. In his 20 years as a mechanic, he had seen plenty of beat-up ships. But this one looked like it should have been sent to a scrapyard years ago. The ship crawled into his dock bay with painful slowness. Jake could hear the grinding of damaged machinery even through the station walls. That was never a good sign. When the vessel finally settled onto the landing platform, it let out a groan that sounded almost alive. Like something in pain finally getting to rest. Jake grabbed his tool belt and headed down to the dock floor. The air smelled like burned metal and leaking coolant. He wiped his greasy hands on his work pants and waited by the airlock. Whatever came out of that ship, he hoped they had enough credits to pay for repairs. His station was small, independent, and barely breaking even most months. The airlock hissed and popped. Steam vented from the seals. The door opened slowly like it was fighting against itself. And then Jake saw what stepped out. The alien was huge. Nearly 7 feet tall, maybe more. Its body was covered in dark fur that looked like it had once been well-groomed but now was matted and dull. The face was wolf-like with a long muzzle, pointed ears that twitched at every sound, and eyes that glowed amber in the dim dock lighting. Sharp teeth showed when the creature breathed. Its hands ended in claws that looked like they could tear through metal. Jake had heard about the Kravith, wolf warriors from the outer systems. Proud, fierce, and not the type to ask anyone for help. Seeing one here, at his tiny repair station in the middle of nowhere, was unusual. "You fix ships." The alien's voice came through a translator device on its collar. The words were rough, tired, like someone who had not slept in days. Jake found his voice. "That's what the sign says." He pointed to the faded logo above his shop. "What happened to you?" The alien's ears twitched. "Doesn't matter. Can you patch the hull breaches and get the secondary engine running?" "I have minimal credits." Jake walked around the ship, taking his time to look at everything. His trained eye picked up details that made his stomach sink. The damage was not from one fight or one accident. This was years of neglect. The hull panels were not just damaged but corroded. The weld marks showed someone had tried to fix things with whatever they could find. Nothing matched. It was all wrong. "When's the last time someone did maintenance on this thing?" Jake asked, running his hand along a rusted panel. The alien's ears flattened against its skull. Its whole body went stiff. "Can you fix it or not, human?" There was something in that voice. Not anger. Something deeper. Something that sounded like shame mixed with desperation. Jake straightened up. "I can patch it. But mister, this ship needs a lot more than patches. This thing needs a complete overhaul." "Patches will do." The Kravith pulled out a credit chip and held it out. The amount displayed on the chip was barely enough to cover materials, let alone labor. "I'll return in 2 days." Before Jake could say anything else, the alien turned and walked away. Its shoulders were hunched forward. Each step looked heavy, like the creature was carrying an invisible weight. Jake watched until the alien disappeared into the station corridor. Something was very wrong here. Ships like this, military-grade Kravith cruisers, were supposed to be maintained by professional fleet mechanics. They were warships built to last centuries. They did not end up looking like garbage unless something had gone very, very wrong. And Kravith warriors did not show up at random human repair docks with barely enough money to pay for basic fixes. Jake stood there for a moment, staring at the broken ship. Then he sighed and climbed up the access ladder into the vessel's interior. The inside was worse than the outside. The corridor lights flickered. Some were completely dead. The air smelled stale and recycled too many times. Jake walked toward the engine room, and with each step, his concern grew. The walls showed signs of desperate repairs. Wires were held together with tape. Coolant pipes were patched with materials that were never meant for that purpose. Control panels had been jury-rigged with parts from at least 3 different manufacturers, none of them compatible with Kravith technology. Someone had been keeping this ship alive through sheer stubborn will. Jake reached the engine room and stopped. The main power core was struggling to maintain basic functions. The AI core, the brain of the ship, was completely dark. Offline. That should not even be possible on a military vessel. Those systems had multiple redundancies. What the hell happened to you? Jake whispered to the empty ship. He stood there looking at the disaster around him. The smart thing would be to do exactly what the alien asked. Patch the hull breaches. Fix the secondary engine enough to get it running. Take the credits and send the ship on its way. That was business. That was practical. But Jake had never been good at walking away from something that needed help. He looked at his watch. 2 days. The alien would be back in 2 days expecting basic patches. Jake rolled up his sleeves, grabbed his tools and got to work. Not on patches. On actually fixing this dying ship. He did not know why he was doing it. Maybe it was the way the alien had walked away defeated and broken. Maybe it was because Jake understood what it felt like when no one else would help you. Or maybe he was just a fool who could not say no to a machine that was crying out to be saved. Whatever the reason, Jake committed himself to the work ahead. This was going to be a long 2 days. 18 hours had passed since Jake started working on the ship. His back ached from crawling through tight access tunnels. His hands were covered in cuts from sharp metal edges. He had not eaten anything except some protein bars he kept in his tool belt. But he kept going. He was elbow deep in the power distribution system, trying to trace why half the ship's circuits were not getting proper energy flow. The wiring was a nightmare. Someone had spliced together cables that were never meant to connect. It was dangerous and inefficient. Jake was pulling apart another bundle of twisted wires when his glove scraped against something underneath. He paused and looked closer. There was something carved into the metal beneath all the mess. Jake grabbed a cleaning cloth and carefully wiped away layers of carbon scoring and grime. Slowly markings appeared. They were not random scratches. These were deliberate etchings, carefully carved into the internal structure of the ship. Ceremonial markings. The kind that meant something important. He pulled out his handheld scanner and activated the translation software. The device struggled with the symbols. The Kravith language had multiple dialects, and this looked like formal military script. After several minutes of processing, words appeared on his screen. Shadow of Honor. Jake sat back on his heels and stared at the translation. That was not just a name. That was a title. Ships with names like that were important. They were vessels that had done something significant. He started looking around more carefully. As he moved through the ship's corridors and access spaces, he found more evidence. Military commendations were welded to structural beams throughout the vessel. Each one marked a battle, a mission or some act of service. There were dozens of them. This ship had not just seen combat. It had been decorated, honored, celebrated. So why was it falling apart? Why would a ship with this kind of history be held together with tape and hope? Why would its owner show up at a nobody repair dock with barely enough credits to pay for basic work? The questions bothered Jake more than the physical work. Something was deeply wrong with this picture. He made his way to the AI core, climbing down a ladder into the central processing chamber. The room should have been filled with light and the hum of active computers. Instead, it was dark and silent. Jake knew he was way past the job he had been paid for. The alien had asked for hull patches and engine work. He had not asked Jake to dig into the ship's computer brain. But Jake could not help himself. A ship's AI was its soul. Without it, the vessel was just a hollow shell. The core itself was damaged but not completely destroyed. Jake opened the access panel and looked inside. What he saw made him angry. Someone had tried to repair the AI using completely incompatible hardware. It was like trying to fix a broken bone with duct tape. The parts did not match. The connections were wrong. Whoever did this work had no idea what they were doing. Or maybe they did know, and this was the best they could manage with limited resources. Jake pulled out his repair kit and got to work. The next 6 hours disappeared as he carefully extracted the corrupted Kravith data cores. Each piece had to be handled with extreme care. One wrong move and the data would be lost forever. His hands cramped from holding delicate tools in precise positions. His eyes burned from staring at tiny components under a magnifying lens. He interfaced the damaged cores with human recovery systems. It was experimental. Kravith technology and human technology were built on different principles. They did not usually play nice together. But Jake had always been good at making things work that were not supposed to work. The delicate process felt pointless at times. The data was so corrupted. So much was missing or damaged. But Jake kept at it, piece by piece, connection by connection. Then something happened. The AI core hummed. Just a small sound at first. Then lights began flickering on inside the chamber. A holographic interface tried to form in the air above the main processor. It stuttered and glitched, appearing and disappearing like a bad video signal. System, reboot, scanning. The voice was mechanical, broken, struggling to form words. Error. Unknown repair signature detected. This unit does not recognize. The hologram stabilized slightly. It showed a geometric pattern, the visual representation of the ship's artificial intelligence. The pattern shifted as the AI processed information. You are human. The voice sounded surprised. Jake wiped sweat from his forehead. Guilty as charged. Welcome back to the land of the living. This unit's memory is fragmented. Core personality matrix is at 42% integrity. There was a pause as the AI processed more information. But, you are repairing me? Why? Jake shrugged, even though he was not sure the AI could interpret the gesture. Because you need it. Illogical. The AI's voice became more focused, more present. This vessel is registered to an exiled operator. No facility will service this ship. No mechanic will accept work on this vessel. You gain nothing from this action. You will not be paid. You may face consequences for helping in exile. Why would you do this? Jake stopped working and looked at the flickering hologram. His stomach dropped. Exiled? Your captain is exiled. Correct. Commander Torvin Ironmane was removed from the Kravith fleet 3 years, 4 months and 17 days ago. All service rights were revoked. This unit has been unable to receive proper maintenance since that time. All requests for repair have been denied at every facility in Kravith space. Suddenly everything made sense. The desperate repairs. The incompatible parts. The neglect. The way the alien had walked away with his shoulders hunched and his head down. He had been blacklisted by his own people. Cut off. Left to die slowly in a dying ship. 3 years. This ship had been falling apart for 3 years and no one would help. No wonder the alien looked so defeated. No wonder he could barely pay for basic patches. He probably spent every credit he had just trying to keep the engines running one more day. Jake felt something burn in his chest. Anger maybe. Or just stubborn determination. He picked up his tools again. Well, he said, good thing I'm not Kravith then. Let's see if we can get you back to full integrity. The AI was quiet for a moment. This is highly irregular. Humans do not typically assist exiled Kravith. The political complications alone should deter you. Jake connected another data core and watched the AI's integrity percentage climb to 48%. Yeah, I get that a lot. People tell me I should mind my own business. Stay out of trouble. Do the smart thing. He smiled. Never been good at listening. I do not understand your motivation. You don't have to. Just let me work. The AI's hologram flickered but stayed stable. Very well. I will assist where I can. But I must warn you, human. Helping us may bring consequences you are not prepared for. Jake laughed, but there was no humor in it. Buddy, I stopped worrying about consequences about 18 hours ago. Now let's get you fixed. Retry DD. Jake did not go home that night. He called his apartment and left a message for his neighbor to feed his cat. Then he went right back to work. The next day came and went. Jake barely noticed. He lived on coffee and whatever snacks he had stashed around his workshop. His eyes burned from lack of sleep. His muscles ached from climbing through tight spaces and lifting heavy equipment. But he could not stop. Every time he fixed one system, he found 3 more that needed attention. The ship was like a puzzle where all the pieces were broken. On the second day, Jake realized he was running out of parts. The ship needed components he did not have in stock. Specialized pieces that cost serious money. Money he did not have. He pulled out his communicator and called Danny, his parts supplier. Danny owed him a favor from last year when Jake had fixed his delivery shuttle for free. Time to cash in that favor. Danny, I need parts. A lot of parts. And I need them delivered today. Today? Jake, that's gonna cost extra for rush delivery. You got the credits? Jake hesitated. Put it on my account. I'm good for it. Your account is already pretty stretched, buddy. I don't know if I can. Please, Danny. I'll pay you back. I promise. But I need these parts now. There was a long silence on the other end. Finally, Danny sighed. All right. Send me the list. But Jake, you're gonna owe me big time. I know. Thanks, Danny. I mean it. The parts arrived 3 hours later. Jake signed for them without even looking at the total cost. He probably could not afford it. His station barely made enough to cover expenses most months. But he would figure it out later. Right now he had work to do. The Kravith ship fought him every step of the way. Systems that should have been simple were needlessly complex. The Kravith built everything with redundancy on top of redundancy. 3 backups for every primary system. It made things reliable but also incredibly complicated. The power routing made no sense by human standards. Energy flowed through paths that seemed designed to be confusing. Jake spent 2 hours just mapping out the electrical systems before he could even start repairs. But Jake had always been good at thinking sideways. When the standard approach did not work, he found another way. He rerouted the main power distribution using civilian-grade human relays. They were simpler, cheaper, and easier to maintain than the military Kravith components. Any Kravith engineer would have said it would not work. The power requirements were too different. The tolerances were not precise enough. Jake made it work anyway. He replaced the damaged coolant system with a hybrid setup that combined human and Kravith technology. It was ugly. Pipes of different sizes connected with custom-made adapters. Coolant from 2 different manufacturers mixed in ways that probably violated a dozen safety regulations. But the temperature readings stabilized. The system worked. Jake even installed human-designed emergency backup systems throughout the ship. Small battery packs and power cells hidden in strategic locations. If the main systems failed, these backups would keep life support running. They were civilian technology, the kind used in space stations and mining colonies. Nothing fancy. But they were reliable. None of it was pretty. None of it was standard. Jake's repairs looked like a patchwork quilt, mixing technologies that were never meant to work together. But slowly, impossibly, the ship came back to life. Lights turned on in sections that had been dark for years. Control panels lit up with green indicators instead of red warnings. The engine's hum became steady instead of that worrying sputter. The ship started to feel alive again. Your repair methodology is highly unorthodox, the AI observed as Jake worked on the navigation system. The AI's voice was stronger now, more present. The memory restoration was bringing it back to full capacity. Jake grunted as he connected a new processing module. You saying it's not working? I'm saying, it is working better than it should. My processing speed has increased by 18%. Power efficiency is up 22%. These modifications should not be compatible with my architecture. Yet they are not only compatible, they are improving my performance. Jake wiped sweat from his forehead and grinned. Maybe Kravith engineers are just too stuck in their ways. You guys build things one way and refuse to consider that there might be better options. Sometimes you gotta think outside the box. The AI's hologram pulsed, a sign it was processing complex thoughts. I am detecting memory core restoration at 78%. You are recovering data that was considered irretrievable. Data that Kravith technicians declared permanently lost. Jake shrugged as he calibrated a sensor array. Human data recovery techniques. We're pretty good at digging up stuff people thought was lost forever. Had a lot of practice recovering information from damaged systems during the colony wars. As more memories came back online, the AI's voice changed. It became more focused, more present, more like a person than a machine. I remember now. I remember what happened. Commander Torvin refused an order. A dishonorable order. Jake stopped working and looked at the hologram. What kind of order? He was told to fire on a civilian transport. A refugee ship carrying families fleeing a war zone. The transport had entered restricted space without proper clearance. Command ordered all ships in the area to destroy it. Commander Torvin refused. He argued that the transport was unarmed and filled with non-combatants. He gave them safe passage instead. Jake felt his chest tighten. And they exiled him for that? Correct. The command structure deemed his refusal as insubordination, a violation of direct orders during wartime. His honor was stripped. His rank was removed. His ship, myself, was denied all service rights. We have been dying together for 3 years. Slowly falling apart because no one would help us. Jake stood there for a moment, his hands clenched into fists. He was exiled for refusing to kill civilians? For doing the right thing? That is correct. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. It is Kravith law. Orders must be obeyed. Discipline must be maintained. Individual judgment is considered less important than chain of command. Jake shook his head and went back to work, but now his movements were faster, more determined. Well, it's a stupid law. Where I come from, we've got a word for people who refuse to follow evil orders. We call them heroes. He connected another circuit and watched the power flow stabilize. Let's make sure you're both around long enough to see that law changed. The AI was quiet for a moment. You truly believe that is possible? I don't know. But I know this. That commander of yours saved lives. He did what was right when everyone else wanted him to do what was easy. That kind of person deserves a second chance. Jake smiled. And this ship deserves to fly again. So let's make it happen. Jake was running a final diagnostic on the navigation system when he heard footsteps on the dock platform. He checked his watch and frowned. The alien was not supposed to be back for another 6 hours. He climbed down from the ship and saw Torvin standing at the airlock entrance. The Kravith had frozen in place, staring at his vessel like he was seeing a ghost. The ship looked completely different. Every hull panel was sealed properly. The carbon scoring had been cleaned away, revealing the original metal underneath. The engines hummed with steady, reliable power instead of that horrible sputtering cough. The running lights glowed bright and clean along the hull. Even the docking struts stood straight instead of tilted at odd angles. The ship looked alive. Really alive. Not just functioning but healthy. "What did you do?" Torvin's voice came out as barely a whisper. His amber eyes were wide, reflecting the glow of the ship's lights. Jake wiped his hands on his work pants. "Fixed your ship." "Really fixed it?" Torvin took a few steps closer, his movements slow and careful like he was afraid the ship might disappear if he moved too fast. "I paid you for patches. For basic repairs. 4 hull breaches and engine work only." "Yeah, well?" Jake shrugged, suddenly feeling awkward under the alien's intense stare. "I don't do things halfway. Never have. Come on, I'll show you what I did." For the next hour, Jake walked Torvin through every system. They started in the engine room where the power core now ran smooth and quiet. Jake explained the hybrid human Kravith systems he had installed, how he had rerouted the power distribution to be more efficient. Torvin's hands trembled as he touched the control panels. His clawed fingers traced over readings that showed green across the board. "These numbers? I have not seen these numbers in 3 years." They moved through the ship section by section. Jake showed him the new coolant system, the backup power cells, the repaired environmental controls. With each system, Torvin became quieter. His ears stayed flat against his skull. His shoulders started to shake. When they reached the bridge, Jake felt nervous. This was the big moment. "I also fixed your AI core. Took some creative work, but I think you'll be happy with the results." Torvin stepped onto the bridge. The command chair sat in the center, surrounded by control stations that now glowed with active displays. Everything was clean, functional, perfect. "Shadow of Honor," Torvin said quietly. "Status report." The holographic interface materialized above the central console. The AI's voice rang out clear and strong, nothing like the broken, stuttering thing it had been before. "Shadow of Honor, reporting full operational status, Commander. All systems functioning at optimal capacity. It is good to serve you again." Torvin's legs gave out. He collapsed into the captain's chair and buried his face in his hands. His whole body shook. At first Jake thought something was wrong, but then he realized the alien was crying. Silent, shaking sobs that made his shoulders heave. Jake stood there awkwardly, not sure what to do. He had never been good with emotional situations. Finally Torvin looked up. His amber eyes were wet. "Why?" His voice cracked. "You owe me nothing. My own people denied me aid. They abandoned me. Why would you, a human, do this? Why would you spend your time, your resources, your energy on someone like me?" Jake leaned against the console and crossed his arms. He had known this question was coming, but he still was not sure how to answer it. "Because it needed doing," he said finally. "Because you didn't deserve what happened to you. And because I've never been able to walk away from something that could be saved." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Your AI told me what happened. What you refused to do." Torvin's ears flattened completely. "Then you know I am dishonored. You know I disobeyed orders. I broke the most sacred rule of military service." "I know you did the right thing," Jake said firmly. "And your people punished you for it. That's not dishonor, Torvin. That's integrity. That's courage. You saved lives when everyone else wanted you to take them. Where I come from, that makes you a hero, not a criminal." Torvin stared at him like Jake was speaking a foreign language. "You truly believe that?" "I do." Before Torvin could respond, Jake's comm unit on his belt chirped urgently. He pulled it out and his face went pale as he listened to the automated message from station control. "What is it?" Torvin asked, standing up quickly. Jake's voice was tight. "Kravith ships. 3 of them. Military vessels. They just entered the sector and they're demanding you leave the station immediately." He swallowed hard. "And they're threatening to blacklist my dock if I helped you. Station control is asking me to confirm that I only did basic repairs." Torvin's whole demeanor changed. The vulnerable, emotional alien disappeared. In his place stood a warrior, decisive and quick. "Then I will leave. No. Before they arrive." "Hold on." "No." Torvin moved toward the airlock with purpose. You have done more for me than anyone in 3 years. You have given me back my ship, my companion, my hope. I will not repay that kindness with your ruin. I will not let you lose everything because of me." Jake grabbed his arm, stopping him. The fur was rough under his hand. "Wait. Just wait a second. Let me think." "There is nothing to think about," Torvin said, but he did not pull away. "If I stay, you lose your business. You lose your livelihood. I cannot allow that." "Commander." The AI's voice cut through their argument. Both of them turned to look at the hologram. "The restoration of my memory cores has revealed relevant data. Data that was thought permanently lost." "What kind of data?" Jake asked. "The original order," Commander Torvin refused. "I have full records of the communication, including verification codes and command authorization. I also have evidence of corruption in the command chain. Communications that were deleted from official records. Proof that the civilian transport was deliberately sent into restricted space as a trap. The order to fire was given knowing the transport was filled with refugees." The bridge fell silent. Jake and Torvin looked at each other. "How much evidence?" Jake asked quietly. "Enough to demand a formal review of the commander's case," the AI replied. "Enough to prove the commander acted with honor. Enough to show that the real crime was the order itself, not the refusal to follow it." Torvin sank back into his chair, looking stunned. "That data was erased. I saw it deleted from your memory myself." "It was deleted from primary memory," the AI confirmed. "But human data recovery techniques are remarkably thorough. Jake Mitchell recovered information from backup sectors that Kravith technicians did not even know existed." Jake felt a grin spreading across his face. "So we don't have to run. We have proof. We have evidence. We have everything we need to clear your name." "We have evidence," Torvin said slowly. "But will they listen? Will they care?" "Only one way to find out," Jake said. "Let's go meet these ships and show them what we found." The Kravith enforcement ships arrived within the hour. Jake watched them through the observation window as they docked. 3 massive warships, each one bristling with weapons. They made his small repair station look like a toy. His hands were sweating. This could go very wrong very fast. The docking clamps connected with heavy thuds that shook the station floor. Jake took a deep breath and headed to the airlock. Torvin stood beside him, silent and still. The alien's ears were flat against his skull, his body tense like he was ready for a fight. The airlock opened and Kravith soldiers poured through. 4 of them, fully armed and armored. They took positions around the entrance, weapons ready but not aimed. Then their commander stepped through. She was tall even for a Kravith. Her fur was darker than Torvin's, almost black, with streaks of gray around her muzzle. A long scar ran down the left side of her face, cutting through one eye that had turned milky white. She moved with absolute authority, like someone who had never questioned her right to command. "You harbor an exile," she growled at Jake. Her voice was rough and dangerous. "This violates our agreements with this station." Jake crossed his arms and stood his ground. "I repaired a ship. Last I checked, that's not a crime." "You aided a dishonored warrior." The commander stepped closer, looming over Jake. "His ship should have been left to die. You interfered with Kravith justice." Jake felt anger rising in his chest. "Then you should have done a better job of it. Because that ship is running better now than when it left your space." The commander's eyes narrowed dangerously. Her lips pulled back, showing sharp teeth. "Impossible. No human could properly restore a Kravith military vessel. You do not have the knowledge. You do not have the skill. You are barely capable of maintaining your own primitive technology." Jake smiled, but it was not a friendly smile. "Want to bet?" He led them to the ship. The commander, whose name he learned was Calera, walked around the shadow of honor with 3 of her engineers. Jake watched their faces carefully. At first, Calera looked contemptuous. She clearly expected to find crude patch jobs and failing systems. But as her engineers started running scans, her expression changed. Contempt shifted to confusion. Confusion became surprise. Surprise turned into outright shock. The engineers were muttering to each other in their own language. They pulled out scanning devices and ran diagnostics on system after system. One engineer opened an access panel and stared at the hybrid power distribution network Jake had installed. Another checked the coolant system and then checked it again like he could not believe the readings. "These modifications," one engineer said slowly, speaking in translated common. "They should not work. Human technology is not compatible with our systems. The power tolerances are wrong. The interface protocols are completely different." "But they do work," Jake replied calmly. Better than your original designs, actually. Power efficiency is up 22%. System stability has improved across the board. The ship is running smoother than it has in years. Kalara rounded on him, her good eye blazing with anger. You dare suggest that human methods are superior to Commander? The Shadow of Honor's AI interrupted, its voice filling the dock through external speakers. I am transmitting my restored memory cores to your ship. I believe you will find the contents illuminating. The Kravith officers froze. Kalara pulled out a data tablet and stared at it. Jake watched as her expression changed while she read. The other officers crowded around her, reading over her shoulder. The dock fell silent except for the hum of the ship's engines. Minutes passed. Jake's heart pounded in his chest. Everything depended on this moment. If the Kravith decided the evidence did not matter, if they chose politics over truth, then all his work meant nothing. Finally, Kalara looked up. She stared at Torvin for a long moment. You refused to fire on a civilian transport carrying 347 refugees. Mostly children. Yes, Torvin said quietly. Command told you they were smugglers. Criminals who had violated restricted space. Yes. But you knew they were not. You scanned the transport. You saw the life signs. You saw the families. Torvin's ears flattened. I saw children, Commander. Frightened children who had done nothing wrong except be born in the wrong place at the wrong time. I could not fire on them. I would not. Kalara's scarred face was unreadable. This data shows communications between your commanding officer and certain political figures. Communications that were deleted from official records. It shows the transport was deliberately sent into restricted space. That your commanding officer wanted an excuse to destroy it for political reasons. I did not know all of that at the time, Torvin said. I only knew that firing on unarmed civilians was wrong. Kalara was quiet for a moment. Then she straightened up and spoke formally. This changes things. Commander Torvin, your exile will be reviewed. This evidence demands it. I cannot promise full reinstatement, but at minimum, your service rights will be restored pending investigation. Torvin nodded once, his whole body sagging with relief. But Kalara was not done. She turned to Jake, studying him with her one good eye. You human. You restored a Kravith warship using inferior technology and outdated methods. You achieved results our best engineers said were impossible. She paused. How? Jake shrugged. I didn't try to make it work the way you wanted. I made it work the way it needed to. Sometimes that's the difference. You Kravith, you build everything one way because that's how it's always been done. But just because something is traditional doesn't mean it's the best option. One of the engineers spoke up. These hybrid systems could revolutionize our repair protocols. Kalara silenced him with a look. But Jake saw something in her expression. Not anger. Respect maybe. Or at least acknowledgement. Over the next few weeks, Torvin's case was reviewed by Kravith authorities. The evidence was too strong to ignore. His honor was not fully restored. Kravith politics moved slowly and grudges ran deep. But he was no longer exiled. He could dock at Kravith stations. He could hold his head up again. He was no longer a ghost. Jake expected him to leave after that. To return to his people, to rejoin his fleet. Instead, weeks passed and the Shadow of Honor remained docked at the station. One evening, Jake found Torvin on the observation deck, staring out at the stars. You're not going back? Jake asked. Torvin shook his head slowly. My people saw a problem and walked away. They saw me dying and did nothing. You saw a problem and fixed it. You helped when helping me could only hurt you. He turned to look at Jake. That is the kind of pack I wish to run with. If you will have me. Jake grinned. Always room for one more. Besides, I could use someone who actually knows Kravith systems. Might make repairs easier. Word spread quickly through the sector. A human mechanic who did not care about politics or honor codes or who was supposed to help whom. One by one, other aliens started showing up. Outcasts, exiles, the forgotten and the broken. Species that had been abandoned by their own kind. And Jake fixed them all. Their ships. Their equipment. Sometimes their hope. Because that is what humans did. They did not walk away from things that could be saved. They rolled up their sleeves and got to work. They found solutions when everyone else saw only problems. The Shadow of Honor became a permanent fixture at the dock, its hybrid systems a testament to what could be built when someone cared more about doing what was right than following what was proper. And somewhere in the Kravith fleets, engineers began quietly studying human repair techniques. Learning that sometimes the best solution was not the traditional one. It was the one that actually gave a damn. Jake's little repair dock became something more. A refuge. A second chance. A place where being broken did not mean being worthless. And it all started because one human mechanic could not walk away from a dying ship and the warrior who refused to give up on it. The end.